All right, good evening. Today is March 15th, 2022. The time is 5:24 p.m. and I will call the Amherst County Board of Supervisors Budget Workshop to order. The first item on our agenda is the Davenport presentation, but I do not see Davenport.
They are on their way.
Okay.
Should
Would
be
you like
here
to
within
move
30 minutes. I
to?
think if we can go to the next item,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
You okay with that? We'll go to the next item, which is the revised proposed budget.
You okay? All right, we're going to hit a lot of different pieces, so bear with me. as we go through these. It seems like a lot of stuff, but we'll talk through them. So the first two areas that were updated and are reflected in the new budget numbers is your CIP and your supplemental budgets. In your board meeting last time, you moved 3 recreation projects from the ARPA plan to the CIP plan and agreed to pay a portion of the fire engine with the ARPA money, doing a kind of a switch there. So those have been reflected in the new document for the CIP. In the supplemental, the changes were that I went ahead and we removed the Mill Creek survey because you've already appropriated those funds. We moved the grant administrator and the deputy fire marshal below the red line so that now your total CIP use of fund balance stays at the $1,752,700 that we started with, and your total supplemental use, one-time use of fund balance is reduced to $170,334. And you can't really see this, but I just stuck it in there for whoever actually printed them out. I wanted to highlight the 3 that we added and the funding that we added at the bottom so that you come out a net zero. There's no change to the total amount of money that's being spent by the general fund. And then this shows your new cut lines for your supplemental budget as directed from the last board meeting. So now with those changes, we're going to look at some other budget changes and how that affected your revenues and your expenses. So we did a few things to the budget. We increased personal property taxes due to increased values. I, after having a conversation with the Commissioner of Revenue, had not realized that I knew used cars prices had gone up. I did not realize how substantially they have gone up in the little book that they use. So we've adjusted the property tax number to reflect that increase. We received our VRS increase. We've incorporated the new debt service currently based on scenario 3, which is what seemed to be favored at the last discussion of the debt. The janitorial contract increase has been incorporated. I have included a $100,000 bucket for fuel cost increase because there's quite a fear that we're going to have people are going to run out of their budget if things don't change. I had forgotten about the Humane Society debt payment revenue. When we refinance that, they actually pay us now, not the EDA. Well, I counted their debt, but I didn't count their money, so that helped us a little bit. And this had been discussed before at Amherst County Fair funding of $30,000 had been left out of the community development area. Any questions about these changes that I made? I didn't put any dollar amounts or anything. I just wanted you to know the tweaks that had been made to get closer to the correct budget. Any questions?
Board? No, sir.
You all have a new copy of the revenue worksheet. I just wanted to include it because we had made those couple changes. So now this is what you're currently with the new personal property tax and everything included. This is how your budget projection looks out through 26. Your green columns are your revenue and the red are your expenses. It also makes your general fund quite large. It's going right on off in a good direction. Your future fund would meet your required fund balance by 2028. You'd have you would meet your required fund balance plus have about $8 million in that future fund if we kept at the same pace. So here are your total numbers. Total revenue, less operating expenses, less your CIP, and less your supplemental, leaves you some remaining revenue of $2.7 million. This is based off the new numbers on the personal property. Any questions so far? Jimmy looks perplexed, that's why I'm asking.
No, I'm fine.
I think we're waiting for the next slides.
I know, I'm just trying to get you there. Just take it slow and let it absorb. So we're going to do the taxes, look at some options for the tax assessment for motor vehicles and motorcycles only. So in coming up with these and working with the Commissioner of Revenue, and looking at past numbers, we had a collection rate in 2020 of 93%. In 2021, we are estimating to only collect 90%. And she agrees that our collections are not what they used to be because the taxes are higher and people are not paying. The 2022 estimated increase of assessed value is 30%. That is the number that we felt safe with estimating on, because some people come in at like 20 and some people are coming in as high as 41. But we want to keep the estimated collection rate at 90%. And this does not include personal property tax relief. So, if you don't cut anything or change the assessed value, we are projecting 30% increase to assessed value, a total tax of $11 million, and we estimate to collect just shy of $10 million. It was brought up and proposed the 25% in comparison to Lynchburg, so I pulled those numbers. 2021, the estimated collections are 7.6 million, and 2022 is 7.4 million if we do a 25% assessed value reduction. So you would reduce the revenue that we are currently showing in the budget by 2.4 and some change. 2.4 million. So I thought, well, you might want some options, so I did a little more math. So I took 23%, which ends up 7.6 million in collections in 21, comes out to 7.6 million in 22. You would reduce the tax projection by 2.28. If you did 20%, you still have the same estimated collections of 7.6. You most likely will collect about 8 million and only reduce the revenue projection by 1.1 million. That's a lot of numbers. But those, I only brought up the other two because I wanted you to have some options. And so there they are. I did a little cut analysis based on a $20,000 valued vehicle. And as you can see, the 25% cut basically is a net change of negative 17, 23%, probably with rounding was probably zero, and 20% is a $28 increase at the $20,000 value. Now, if you keep, whichever cut you chose, if you choose to do that with the assessed value, which you could just do none, but if you chose to do one of those, I have 3 slides that show you what happens if you make that adjustment and move forward with the same kind of adjustment. So if you did the 25, you would still only break even in 2024. Like, you're still gonna, your expenditures are gonna exceed once you get to 2025. The red bar is taller than the green bar. 23%, the same thing happens at 2025. You have a little bit more to work with in 2024. And then in the 20%, you break even in 2026. You come out ahead, even if you did the 20% and had to do it again every year to keep that same level of funding, you would end up not having to worry and break even until 2026, based on current projections.
So are you following the choices? Are you following what we're cutting and what we're talking about how much to give back to the taxpayers?
Yeah, I am. Are you guys good?
Okay.
All right.
And then what that leaves us with to work with
So,
after we give it some back.
so can we stop and discuss that point now, or y'all good with that? So I guess I'll start. I guess my thought on it is if we do any type of a cut, we should look at it on an annual basis, right? So just because we do a cut this year doesn't mean I don't want to tie us to doing it next year, because the market may stabilize, right? Prices
Correct.
may fall at some point.
I think that's the way we would write it in the budget resolution, would be just for 1 year and revisit it when the next January rolls around and we can see what's going on again.
And you've done some very solid work here, and I appreciate that. I think, but these projections are based on if the cuts carried forward each year,
Yes.
right? Okay. So I guess, board, just where I'm at, I would be comfortable with the 20% cut moving forward.
I'm fine with that as well, and I agree we should look at it with as fluid as everything is right now. I think we should look at it right now from year to year, not
I
looking
agree.
at long-term projections. So
I understand that
I'm
too.
I'm fine with
It's a pretty easy process to do on the commissioner's side as well. She and I talked for a long time about this and only having to do it for 1 year,
Yep.
so.
I'm fine with that.
Mr. Wade?
I have no objections.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
And we'll go forward with that.
Okay.
All right,
What else you got?
well, that was just the ugly 25% cut graph. So, now that I know you have 1 million, no, 1,631,000-ish left over in money, in funds, revenue, recurring revenue.
So 1.6 million.
So, I put one number up there because I know that the schools are are currently sitting on a 6.5% COLA. So, I gave you what a 1% what a 1% increase for us would look like.
So what did you have budgeted in the budget, Mr. Rogers? 5%?
5.
We started with 5.
So you already have 5% budgeted. So if
Yes,
we
sir.
match the schools at 6.5, that's 1.5% more. So how
Right,
much?
so it's 218.7 is what it would cost for a 1.5.
I would be fine matching the schools.
Coming out of the 1.6 million.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Wade?
What was that number again?
For the 1.5?
Yeah.
218.7.
Coming out of the 1.6.
Right.
So it sounds like you got consensus on that.
Yeah, it's hard to look at it when the inflation hit 8% last month.
Oh, I know.
Whew, it's like 5 just doesn't seem, oh, and I missed one thing. I think I skipped over it. I didn't have it on. So the health insurance increase that we included in the budget, I just wanted you to know that PCHP came in and dropped a 1 percentage point in the final, and we passed that on to the employees. We kept our increase at the 200,000 that we had budgeted. And we passed on the little bit of savings.
So
You
that they
pass
don't have to-
savings on to them, or did you pass cost on to them?
Well, so that we had already figured out what the increase was gonna be, okay? The increase was originally budgeted at 14.9. They came in at 13.9. So we'd already fixed the rates and budgeted, based on that, $200,000 increase to our budget. So we just kept our part at the 200 and passed on that 1% savings back down to the employees.
Lowering the employees' rates.
Yeah.
Ours stayed the same, we were able to drop theirs.
Good, okay.
Yeah, and we held dental even though we have an increase, we sucked up the little bit of difference in the dental side to keep that one the same again this year.
Okay.
They did really well to come in with the claims we had where they are,
Okay,
but I forgot to tell you all that.
well, that's good news.
Yes, it was good news. It was nice to be able to pass on a little bit.
So with that, we have what we need.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
Can you go back to the supplemental budget, please?
Certainly.
So we're doing a 6.5% COLA, we're doing a 20% reduction to
Vehicles.
vehicles. I guess that's all like the boats, campers, all that, or?
It does not apply to boats and
So
campers.
it's just
She is strictly
vehicle.
going to use vehicle codes,
Okay.
And motorcycles.
vehicles and motorcycles.
All right, so, Ms. McBride, can you tell us more about the grants administrator? I know we discussed it a little bit. I think all of us have been getting some phone calls about that one, but what would that position do?
Including your slide. I asked her to produce a slide to
Oh,
explain
great.
the position.
Where is my, oh, here it is. So this person would, first and foremost, would do our accounting, reporting, and compliance, and stay up to date on all the compliance. Work on grant availability research. I mentioned last time, I have stuff come to me all the time, but I don't not have time to go and read them all. They will also assist in the application submission for departments and other agencies associated with the county. My goal is to also put CSA accounting, reporting, and compliance with this person. It's a very time-consuming piece, and I really need my accountant to do the other 30 funds we have. Just some of the organizations, you can see them there, those are all different organizations with different rules.
Sure.
So
Different databases.
everything's different.
Forms, different
So-
staff, different auditors.
So would this position also research what grants may be available?
Yes, that's what the grant availability research is.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think that would be a good, like, a while back, Mr. Rogers and I were talking about the pedestrian bridge possibility or something. And
Yeah.
he's like, can you go find something?
And what was the cost of the position?
67 with benefits.
That's 67 with benefits and the one-time cost of 20,000 to redo my office, to hold everybody.
To create the space, to get the desk, to get the computers.
Yeah, there's some relocation, some electrical, but based on prior to last meeting, I had already contacted Harris and we had worked up CAD drawing and how much it was gonna cost, and 20 should cover everything that has to be replaced and moved around in that office. And
Is that a computer for them?
no, IT is gonna take care of the computer.
That's nice. So boy, I don't know if you guys have been getting phone calls, but I know I've gotten some from the EDA and other things. And I know we voted at the last meeting to not fund anything. And I think I actually made the motion, but since I was on a prevailing motion, I would be willing to go ahead and consider funding this grant administrator position. And I'll make that in form of a motion.
Ms. McBride, is it, once this individual were to come on board, I mean, is it a way to know from year to year what this position is producing for
Absolutely.
us as, you know, as far as not maintaining only what we currently have in grant programs that we're currently involved in, but also additional alternative revenues that have been able to begotten because of this individual's,
Yes, I
Being
would
on
say
board
we
with
would keep a database of anything new or existing and mark them as such, so that we would know if the position was really producing a benefit for the county.
Right.
I do think we're missing some things, because I just don't, like I said, I don't have time to read them, but I've looked like at the new infrastructure bill. There's gonna be new stuff under the transportation department.
We have, you saw that list of organizations. We have grants working through all of those. And there are organizations that we just didn't have room on the slide to include.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, Mr. Harris, that, you know, I kind of manage some of the community development block grants. It's a lot of work.
Absolutely.
But if you guys would just bear with me, I'm going to withdraw that motion and put it all into one motion at the end, if that's okay.
Go right ahead.
But I do have another question, and it's a little selfish, but the ARPA funding of the engine, is that going to change timing or purchase requirements for that engine?
Shouldn't.
Okay.
It's simply an appropriation. You're setting aside that much money to purchase an engine.
Okay.
That's all that this does.
All right, so board, if it pleases you, I would move that the staff be directed to use the budget modifications agreed to today, which includes a 6.5% total, not more, but total cost of living increase, a 20% reduction in the vehicle and motorcycle valuations, and $67,000 in recurring costs for a grant administrator, and a one-time cost of $20,000 for office space for the grants administrator. Is there any discussion on that?
No, sir.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, very good. You got what you need?
Yes, sir.
All right, Davenport, got here just in time, buddy.
I apologize, I did not update the calendar reminder we set for ourselves.
You
So
want the podium, or you want to just sit over here?
I'm happy to do either. Do you want me to hand these out though?
Yes.
Yes.
Because you gotta have to get
Or I can do it.
page 23.
Thank you. How you doing?
Hey, you, sir.
I need this.
Thank you. All right, thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Where did you want me, over there or at the podium?
Either one, whichever one
You
you're
might
comfortable with.
either
Take your
walk.
poison.
You're welcome to sit.
All right.
And grab the mic. Where's my turntable? All right. Thank you all for having me here this evening, although I do apologize for being a little late. Sorry about that.
Full disclosure, we didn't start till 5:30, okay?
I still feel bad. It's on, I mean,
You're quite fine, thank you.
so you all may recall, we were here in December, presented several scenarios and options to you all. Since then, we've been back a couple times and we've narrowed down the project amount. You may recall there was a range from 13.8 to 19.1. Then we factored in the additional land and potential construction of a additional parking lot. So the project amount that we are assessing now is 19.6. So we boiled it down to 3 scenarios. In the old presentation, we had a few different structuring scenarios. This time, we've sort of blended those approaches together. 2C and 2D, you may recall, we've blended them together into scenario 3. Okay, so all 3 scenarios we're going to look at today are similar, but they're based on the $19.6 million project fund. Okay? I will skip through the first several pages. I think what matters is what we sort of landed on previously with, bear with me one second, it boiled down to page 16 and 17. So I'm going to start on page 16. Okay? Page number's in the bottom right-hand corner of the printed copy. So the scenarios we looked at, 1, 2, and 3, all of them fund $19.6 million. I know it says 19.1 there, I apologize. The ARPA CARES money that we have for the schools is $6.6 million. There's another $1.35 million in reserves. I think that's part of the carry forward for the schools that the county will be holding to use strategically to defray the increase in debt service, bringing on the new money projects. So in total, we have about $8 million in monies to either downsize or defray or shave new debt service. The first two scenarios, again, are your plain vanilla, call them mortgage-style level annual debt service payments. The only two difference between those is that scenario number one, we use all $8 million just to downsize the borrowing. Scenario two is where we use the 6.6, the ARPA funds, only to downsize the borrowing, and we use the other $1.3 million to help shave the peaks in the early years. And then lastly, scenario three is sort of trying to blend the best strategic approach together and actually shortening the debt to 20 years instead of 25 years, and that helps mitigate the interest expense on the back end. So where we might be pushing a little bit of principal in the early years to make it a little bit more affordable, we're shaving it off the back end too, so we don't pay for it forever, for lack of a better way of putting it. Okay, so if we flip the page to page 17, this is that summary matrix where we had 6 or 8 different scenarios. Again, we've boiled it down to just 3 based on the 19.6. Starting at the top on row 1, we're in all 3 scenarios here, we're assuming our project fund is $19.6 million. Again, scenario 1 on line 2 uses all $8 million to buy it down. Did I say scenario 2 or scenario 1? I apologize. Scenario 1, we use all $8 million to buy it down. Scenario 2, we use the 6.6 to buy it down. And scenario 3, we do the same. We use all the ARPA funds of $6.6 million to buy down the borrowing, to reduce what we go out to the markets to borrow. Okay? Then if you go down a few lines, you'll see that on line 6, we don't have any extra funds, any extra reserves to help shave the debt service peaks because we've used it all up to downsize our borrowing. Under scenario 2, we're using the 1.35 to shave the peaks. And similarly, in scenario 3, we're doing the same, using 1.35 to shave the peaks in the new debt service. Additionally, on line 7, we've capitalized interest during the construction period of approximately 2 years, okay? And so what that helps us do is on the front end, we've borrowed the funds to make the first few interest payments, but then on the back end, we have less interest because we're structuring it and shortening the debt from 25 years down to 20 years, okay? So at the end of the day, if you look on line 12, what is this going to cost us? On scenario 1, about $5.5 million in interest on the $10 million that we would borrow. In scenario 2, it costs us $6.1 million. And then in scenario 3, we're actually paying back less because we've shortened it by 5 years and it's mitigated too by the interest we're borrowing on the front end. Does that make sense? Any questions up to that point? Okay. So then what does this boil down to in affordability? How does it impact our cash flows for the first few years? When you bring on this new debt service at $10 to $12 million, your annual debt service could be anywhere from $465 in the first several years up to $712,000. However, the way we've got it structured in scenario 3, and using that $1.35 million to shave the peaks, we actually reduce the cash flow impact where the county would have to come out of pocket to about $94,000 per year. Okay, and you may recall we were in the $76,000 to $88,000 range, depending on that old scenario 2C and 2D. So we're roughly in the same neighborhood. Rates have gone up quite a bit. We've got a page on that I can circle back to. But on average, our tax exempt benchmark, the MMD that we watch, has gone up on average between year 1 through 30-year maturities about 60 basis points. So it's a sort of a neat approach to go through scenario 3 because you're still able to mitigate a lot of that potential incremental impact with bringing on the new debt. Yes, sir.
Okay, so under scenario 3, we'll borrow 12.4 million.
Yes, sir.
We'll pay it back over 20 years.
Yes, sir.
We'll pay 5.3 million in interest over 20 years.
Correct.
And our debt service is going to go up how much annually?
The net effect is 94.
For 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and then it starts falling.
So essentially, we're able to finance all of this, the school, and it's costing us $100,000 more a year, is what you're saying?
I didn't catch the number you just said.
100,000.
100,000,
Big
okay. Yes,
round
sir.
numbers,
Yes,
okay.
That's right, and the more detailed cash flows can be seen on page 3,
But-
if you wanted to walk through.
Is that because are you also refinancing some existing debt?
So, good question.
Is that how you're getting the savings?
Not yet.
Okay.
That number, that 94,000 a year, does not bake in any savings from the refunding yet. If you look at the bottom of page 17, right now, what we're projecting on the refunding is approximately 22,000 per year in savings. So that 94 offset by the savings of 22,000 on average gets you down to about 72,000 per year. That's the bottom line, row 19 on page 17.
All right, last question, and I'll be quiet. So we're paying how much in debt service now? 3.8 million? Is that what it is? So we're going to go to about 3.9 million.
In year 25.
Okay, so,
We won't have any in year 23 and 24.
all right, I said that was the last
Fiscal
question.
year.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Fiscal year, yeah.
I'm sorry. If something catastrophic happened, what's our borrowing capacity? Are we using it all up, or if we had to fund something else?
No, sir, you're not using it up. In fact, if you want to,
Or were you going to get there?
well, I was trying to jump straight to the
I'm sorry.
upshot so we could have that conversation, but if you look at page 15, your policies are the red line on these two graphs. We are superimposing the proposed debt in the light green on top of what you already have, okay? So to your point, you're $3.8, $3.9 million right now annually.
So it falls, so we're building capacity as we pay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the other important part, if you want to flip real quickly to page 23, the one thing we wanted to be very mindful of when we're structuring around your drop in debt. So if you're looking at page 23, just follow with me real quickly. We've got the fiscal years in column A. Column B is your existing debt service. If you did nothing, just the way it is right now, you're at $3.8 million down through 2028. And what we've proposed to VPSA is to structure our debt so that we're getting out there closer to where you have that $800,000 step down in fiscal year 29, 2030, and 2031, and then really ramping up our principal and shortening it to 2042. That's the concept of going, instead of doing the normal 25 years plus, we're doing 20 years. And that helps us, again, to cut. We don't want to be paying for this forever, and we don't want to overpay interest. So if you look on the far right-hand column versus our current debt service level at 3.8, our current debt service budget, we wanted to be mindful that in 2032 and beyond, we didn't want to just shove all the debt up there and have no capacity. If we need it in the next 10 years, it's there. And what could $2 million in annual debt service afford us. 2-1,
At current rates.
at current rates, just bear with me. You could borrow approximately 28.5 million if you needed it. That's what that $2 million drop, and we're preserving that, so,
Very good, thank you.
yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, you're good.
Which could be a new school in Madison Heights.
Well, yeah, you never know. I think the point is, at least what I'm seeing, is you have structured this where we're able to fund this much-needed school project in its entirety, no doubt, by only raising our debt service, but, let's just call it $100,000. It may be 70 or
It
whatever.
could move up or down between now
Move
and
up or
Christ.
down, but
That's right.
it's very doable,
Yes,
right? And we still have capacity if we need it. And so I think you've done I think you and staff have done a great job putting this together. And I would go with scenario 3, I think.
Thank you.
I think we
You
need
got
them
it?
to.
No, I think you did a great
I think
job
they need to make
pulling
that
this
decision
together. So,
before.
All right, do you need anything else from us?
Well, can we have a motion that you adopt scenario 3, and then RT can present it to the public, and you can get their comment that this is what you'd like to do?
I'll make a motion that we adopt scenario 3.
All right, Board, there's a motion on the floor to adopt scenario 3. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. I vote aye. Anything else?
Not unless you have any other questions or things you want to talk about.
Nope, I think you guys have done a great job this budget year. Thank you.
We should have dinner for you back in the boardroom.
And staff. All right, we stand adjourned. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
And then, we have to, the rest, yeah, I know you have to.